Have you ever wondered if it's possible to turn your passion for shooting documentaries, or really any kind of film for that matter, into a real paying career? Like, does it feel like a job as a professional DP who travels the world for a living is a pipe dream or something that happens to other people but not to you? Well, as someone who didn't go to film school and who had to figure out this career through trial and error, making a ton of mistakes along the way, I know that feeling all too well. But I also have good news for you. If I can go from zero experience or training to shooting for Netflix, National Geographic, and the New York Times in just a few years, then you absolutely can do it too. You don't need a well-connected uncle or a padded trust fund, though those things definitely wouldn't hurt.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
You just need a clear roadmap, and then you have to stick to it. And that's what this video is all about. A 6-step plan that anyone can follow to turn that cinematography dream into a reality that's worked for so many DPs I know, including myself. I'm not gonna pretend it's an overnight magical solution, because it's not. I also won't pretend it's easy either, because even though it's pretty straightforward, it takes some serious dedication. But it's all totally doable if you stick to the right plan. So let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back, and if you're new here, my name is Luke Forsyth, and on this channel, I teach the skills I've learned over 10 years working as a documentary filmmaker and photographer. So just to set the context for you a bit here, I've made 100% of my income with the camera, first as a photojournalist and now as a documentary cinematographer for more than a decade. I didn't go to film school, and I didn't even take a single course on film or photography, yet somehow I ended up shooting for some of the biggest outlets in the world and traveling to places I never thought I'd get to see, and making a decent living from it at the same time. I wasn't more talented than other people, and I didn't grow up rich, but I did have one major advantage early on, and that's a mentor who gave me a step-by-step plan for long-term success. I've talked about this part of my life many times on this channel already, so forgive me if you're sick of hearing about it, but when I decided to go after this weird dream, I'd never shot anything other than travel photos, and I was actually working as an English teacher in South Korea. I was supposed to be signed up for a graduate program in international development when I saw a documentary about a war photographer that lit some sort of fire in my gut and pushed my life in a totally unexpected direction. I refunded my tuition for grad school, transferred pretty much the whole amount to a photojournalist I admired in exchange for a 10-day workshop, and I never looked back. During that workshop, it's not like I suddenly became a super successful documentarian or started banging out award-winning images overnight, and I was actually still a pretty mediocre shooter when we wrapped. Yet I still credit that workshop for every ounce of success I've had since, because what he gave me over those 10 days was a plan. There are no magic solutions, and anyone who tells you they know a secret shortcut is lying to you. What really matters is understanding the steps it takes to get to where you want to go, and then sticking to them over time. And that's exactly what I did, and what you can do too. None of this is complicated, but if you put in the effort, it will work. And sorry, but I have to drop a plug here. This is exactly why I created my first course on documentary cinematography, and it's going live next week. It's called Documentary Cinematography Professional Foundations, and it's going to cover everything I've learned in way more detail than I could go into in one video. It tackles every aspect of the creative, technical, and business skills you need to thrive in this industry, everything from scene coverage to interview setups to making good gear choices, and it also dives deep into professional development and financial aspects of the job that I don't really see talked about much online. If you jumped on the early bird waitlist, you can pre-order this week and get a really nice discount for being first in, and for everyone else, the doors open next Monday. I should say though that I'm only leaving enrollment open for 2 weeks, and I'm gonna cap it at 100 spaces. So if all the spaces fill up before the 2 weeks are up, I'm gonna be closing it early. I'm purposely keeping it limited because I'm actually way more interested in having a smaller group of committed people who I can interact with and actually respond to your feedback by creating new lessons and units over time than I am in making as much money as possible. I just wanted to give you a fair warning on that, because I probably won't open it again until next year sometime, and because I'm going to be adding more and more content based on what you tell me you want, the price is probably going to go up a bit by then as well. So if you're into the idea and you want to get in on the ground level with lifetime access, then this is probably the chance. I know you're not here for a sales pitch, but I'm really excited about this course, and I put a ton of effort into putting it together. And if you're interested in a video like this, you're exactly who this thing is made for. So check it out, link in the description and all that, and I'll stop with the self-promotion for now. Getting back to the video though, the first step is probably the most obvious sounding, but it's so important, and that's to actually commit. If you want to succeed as a cinematographer or filmmaker, or even as a photographer for that matter, you have to decide that this is something you're going to make happen no matter what, regardless of the ups and downs to come. If you go into this stuff with anything other than real dedication, the moment things get rough, you're going to drop out. Now, I'm not telling you to quit your day job on the spot or pack up and move to New York tomorrow, but you do need to tell yourself and the world that this is what you're going to do. Once you've committed yourself, then the rest is just logistics. When you commit, you can start to plan and set goals and measure your progress over time. When I finished that photography workshop, there was no doubt in my mind that I was going to do whatever I had to do to make it work one way or the other. And I really believe that's the reason why that out of more than 50 students who went through the same program with the same photojournalist, I was the only one who went on to have a professional career. I've got a bunch of lessons in the course about goal setting and mentors and all that stuff, but without committing, you're probably not going to stick with it for long enough for things to start working out for you. The next thing you have to do is be smart about how you invest in gear. Now, it's all the rage these days to say that gear doesn't matter at all, but that's just not really true. Cinematography is a technical job as well as a creative one, and while story is king and you can definitely get amazing results with a lot of different cameras, if you want to take this job seriously and commit for the long term, you need to invest in gear with a long-term mindset. I'm not saying you need to buy the most expensive or cutting-edge stuff out there, because I certainly didn't do that, but you do need to be strategic about what equipment you sink your money into so that your kit is flexible enough to grow alongside your career as you do. Basically, this means buying gear with a long-term mindset and choosing systems and accessories that have a clear upgrade path and long-term utility rather than what's flashy and cool right now. For me, that means looking at where you want to go rather than what's most accessible right now. So like maybe you really like the look of the Panasonic GH6 right now because it's a great camera at an affordable price, but in a few years, the lack of high-end lens options and the limited audio ports are probably going to hold you back. Then you're going to have to sell all those Micro Four Thirds lenses at a loss and start all over again with a Sony or Canon or whatever has more professional options in their line. To me, that seems like short-term thinking. Of course, if you just want to shoot a few indie projects and you don't have long-term ambitions for a cinematography career, then by all means stick with whatever you like. But if you think you might want to push your career even further down the road, then to me it just doesn't make sense to invest in limited ecosystems. I know this is probably going to make some people mad, and just to repeat, I have nothing against any camera and they're pretty much all great these days. But trying to think about where you plan to be later, not just where you are now, is going to save you money down the road. I'm really sorry if this advice makes you angry, but you should be trying to think of gear as an investment. And just like the stock market, the best investments are long-term ones. That's why I put a whole unit in the course about gear and how to think about it with the future in mind. So go with whatever works for you, but just make sure you're thinking about where you're going later, not just where you are right now. Moving on, the next thing that all DPs need if they want to grow as professionals is a body of work that proves to the world that they can handle the projects that they want to get. And that means spec work. At the professional level, people are usually reluctant to hire you for work that you've never done before. Like, if you're a commercial DP who wants to shoot car commercials, you're gonna have a hard time landing jobs unless you've already shot a car commercial. It's a really weird, like, chicken before the egg situation, because if you can't get work without already having done that work in the first place, how are you supposed to break in? Well, the answer is by shooting on spec. In the beginning, your portfolio is going to suck. There's just no way around it. So if you want to grow fast as a professional, you need to take the initiative and go out and shoot the things that you want to be hired for later. When I was in the process of switching from photo into video, I always knew that I wanted to shoot on National Geographic type docs about serious social and environmental issues, so I went out and made a few short films that I thought I might fit with that brand. The first thing I tried was a short film about water shortages in Mexico City, and that became the foundation of my very first reel and website work samples. It honestly wasn't all that good, and I've long since pulled it from my portfolio, but in the early stages when I was being considered for B-Cam positions on bigger projects, I at least had something to show to prove that I was a good fit for that type of work. So once you've committed to the process and started investing in gear for the future, if you actually want to start getting hired, you absolutely need to get out there and prove that you can do it. For spec projects, focus on local, easily accessible, and affordable stories rather than dreaming up massive rainforest expeditions that will take months or years to plan, and just start stacking up those portfolio examples. Over time, you'll replace the early ones with better ones, but without just getting out there and making stuff, no one is going to take your word that you can do what you say you can. Next up is my favorite topic that I feel like I've repeated so many times on this channel that it must be getting irritating to some of you, but sorry not sorry, it's networking again. I can't stress enough how important building a professional network is in building a long-term career, because the reality is that not many people are Googling for random DPs when they're starting up a new project. It's all well and good to have solid gear and some great spec projects, but if no one knows who you are, they aren't going to be able to hire you. That's why if you want to take this path seriously, you need to put yourself out there, like make connections with other people in the industry, whether they're directors or producers or other cinematographers or whoever. You can network in a lot of different ways, from cold emailing to attending events to social media connections. And I've got a dedicated lesson in the course and even a free networking guide I made you can get from the link in the description that go over the nuts and bolts of how to network effectively. So I'm not going to go too deep into it because I want to keep this video to a reasonable length. But however you decide to go about it, you have to do it. It's as simple as that. Moving on, the next thing that you'll want to invest in isn't about equipment, but yourself. I'm talking about educating yourself and keeping a student's mindset always. It can be really easy to hit a certain level of ability or success and then just kind of enter a holding pattern where you're just doing the same thing over and over again without much progression. Like maybe you book a big job on a reality TV show. That's amazing, congratulations. At first, you're learning a million new things a day and you're leveling up your skills faster than you thought possible. But then maybe the show wraps and you book another one and another one and another one, and suddenly your cinematography starts to stagnate. Like sure, you're making money and getting pretty good at shooting reality TV, but you're also not learning that much anymore, and that leads to situations where you can get pigeonholed and trapped into a specific kind of work you might not be all that interested in. Whatever it is, you need to keep investing in yourself and your skills and your knowledge so that you stay inspired and stay moving forwards towards what you want without getting stuck. Personally, I try and invest in at least one educational experience a year at minimum, just to make sure I'm as well-rounded as possible and that I stay hungry to improve. Like I've spent 20 hours on a course on editing fundamentals, even though as a cinematographer, I rarely edit. I also took a $1,000 business course and read 4 finance books that had nothing to do with cinematography or filmmaking because I wanted to be better at managing money and negotiating rates. I spent an entire weekend binging a commercial cinematography course, even though probably less than 10% of my income comes from shooting commercials. But even though all this stuff is only tangentially related to what I do, the more I learn, the more well-rounded I get. These educational investments in myself didn't necessarily seem like they'd have the most direct impact on my career, but they were totally worth it and just made me a little bit better in a bunch of areas I'm traditionally weak in. You are the sum of all the things you've learned and done in your life, so never stop learning. As I say this, I realize there's probably a golden opportunity to plug my course here, something about education, but I can't really think of great wording, and at this point, I think you guys already get the point. So let's just keep it moving. The last step in this process is probably the most frustrating one because it's somewhat beyond your control, but nearly every successful cinematographer I know has one thing in common, and that's some sort of lucky break story. One day they meet someone or make something and post it online, and suddenly a random email comes in that changes their lives forever. You might hear these stories though and go, well, that's great for them, but how am I supposed to replicate it? And the truth is that you can't. You have absolutely no control over when your own lucky break might come or in what form it will take when it does appear. But the one thing that's definitely in your power is how prepared you are and how aggressively you react when an opportunity does come your way. So let's break this down for a second. Firstly, it's shocking how many times I've seen people pass on their lucky breaks, and because they don't come very often, not seizing on one can slow you down for years. A good friend of mine in high school wanted to become a music journalist for as long as I can remember, and then one day late at night, someone called to ask if he wanted to take a last-minute slot interviewing a huge metal band when the normal reporter called in sick. It was like 11 p.m. and the gig was across town, and my friend had no prepared questions, so it really was a pain in the ass and pretty terrible timing. So he ended up saying no, and you know what? That person never called back, and within a few years he was working at a bank. Now there's no way to know what would have happened if he'd said yes to that, and who knows if it would have made any difference in the path he took, and there's nothing wrong with working at a bank either. But what I do know that had he jumped on that chance and done the best he could under the circumstances, he would have been a lot closer to achieving his dream than he got by taking the easy way out and staying home to watch TV. My point is that a lucky break can come in many forms and at any time, and more often than not, it's not going to be in the form that's most convenient for you. Whatever it looks like, it's up to you, and you alone to grab hold of it. But the real question is, how do you increase the chances that these breaks are going to come your way in the first place? Well, the answer is to be like a coiled spring, ready to take advantage of whatever comes your way. There's a famous quote which comes from a golfer originally, which goes, "The more I practice, the luckier I seem to get." And that definitely applies here. Lucky breaks tend to overwhelmingly come to those who are prepared for them. So to repeat a story I've said many times on this channel, my lucky break came when a National Geographic camera operator broke his leg on a shoot and I was brought in as an emergency replacement. The DP and I became good friends and he took me around the world with him for nearly 2 years and taught me how to be a real DP. My entire career started with that accident, and it's not at all normal to start your first job working for National Geographic. But behind all that luck is the fact that I had years of photojournalism experience, which meant that I was good at dealing with cameras already, I knew how to work internationally, and I also knew how to treat people that I was shooting with. I shot several spec projects already, so I'd already worked out a lot of the kinks, and I could show the producer that even though I was early on in my career, I could actually shoot in a style that worked for their show. I'd also been spreading my name all over Mexico City, there's networking again, and so the local producer suggested me as the emergency replacement over other, maybe more qualified people. I'd also fully committed to the transition to video, and I was all in on the offer, even though it was like 10 p.m. when they called me and they wanted me to be on the road at 4 a.m. to make it on time for the next day's shoot. But I said yes, without even a second's hesitation. So even though yes, that was the luckiest, literally luckiest break of all time, I was ready for it and I didn't let it go. So be prepared, make the right moves, and when a lucky break comes your way, grab a hold of it like a feral cat and don't let it pass you by. So there we go, 6 steps that nearly every cinematographer, and pretty much every filmmaker for that matter, can take to push their career to the next level. It's pretty simple stuff, but that's not the same as easy. Everyone wants a quick fix to get what they want fast, when the reality is that most of the time it's just a matter of doing the basic things properly over a long period of time. I'll just plug my course one more time here because the whole reason it exists is to give you the foundations you need to go far over time. It literally has professional foundations in the name, and I put everything I had into making it the most comprehensive guide to documentary cinematography that there is. It's much more than just lighting setups, it's the deep foundational knowledge about the technical, creative, business, and professional skills you need to make this happen for yourself. Like I said, it's opening up officially next week, and it's only going to stay open for 2 weeks or until the 100 spaces are filled, whichever comes first. Like I said, I'm keeping it intentionally small because I actually want to be able to interact with you and respond to your feedback, rather than just make as much cash as I possibly can. So if you're thinking about trying to take your cinematography seriously, you might want to think about pre-ordering it because there's a pretty good chance the spots are going to fill up really quickly, and I'm not going to open it up again until next year. Hope that video was helpful as always, and maybe I'll see you in the members group soon. See ya.